Good afternoon, everybody. We have a full agenda today, so we better get started. And first of all, Sarah is going to give us a bit of information.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm just letting you know that at 1:55 today, there is going to be a test for the National Emergency Alert System. So if you want to go ahead and turn off your phones, that would be great. But we're just going to keep rolling with it. But don't be surprised. It's just a test. That's all. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. So everyone, I'm Bill McCutcheon. I'm principal of the Emeritus College until June the 30th, which Sandra Bressler will be succeeding me. She was here. She's walking around. Oh, over here, front row. We have a busy agenda today, so we better get started. We have a 3-part program that includes the business meeting, the award ceremony, and our guest speaker. So we'll begin, as always, by acknowledging that the UBC Point Grey campus is situated on the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territory of the Musqueam people. And UBC is a community of learners, and we must learn from the Indigenous people. Well, we're very pleased to that you could join us today. Such a lovely day. You've chosen to come here instead of other things. And as many people are online as well, so it's a very good turnout today. I think a lot of that probably has to do with our speaker today. And I look forward to this event every year because it's a chance to pause and reflect on our many remarkable accomplishments while looking forward to a fresh year ahead. I hope that while you're here, you'll have time to talk to your peers and enjoy the company of our other members here. The membership really is the heart and soul of the college. And this is a hybrid event. I would like to welcome our online guests, and especially those in the Okanagan. UBCO is part of the Emeritus College as well. For those of you online, you can put any questions you have in the question and answer Q&A box, and a member of staff will ask it the speaker, ask it of the speaker for you. If you have any technical issues, please put them in the chat, and we will do our best to fix them. We'll now like to take a moment of silence for all of our colleagues and friends who have died in the past year. And they are listed on the screen. So at this time, I'd like to ask if there are any changes to the agenda and in the minutes. If there are no comments, we'll move on. Well, at the ripe old age of 7, the college has many achievements to celebrate from the 2024-25 year. We have 1,919, that's 1919 members, 20% of UBC academics. 66 new Emeriti acknowledged by the Senate, 5 members elected to council, and 4 King Charles III coronation medals. We had 98 events, 68 from 12 special interest groups, 13 events from 3 college programs, 19 events that include general meetings, council meetings, new Emeriti, and transitions to retirement meetings. We had 2 special interest groups, veterans, a new group called Veterans Military Affiliated Emeriti and Academics, and UBCO Bridge Group. So that brings our number, I think, to 12 total. We had 4 reports, 3 Emeriti College newsletters, and an annual report. We participated in Seniors for Climate event on October the 1st. That involved a lot of people at UBC. UBC's Climate Emergency Week and the 20th annual UBC Walk for Joy. And that involved a lot of people too. The college addressed each of the strategic priorities. In 1922, we set up a plan for the college at a retreat, and there were several priorities that came out of that. For strategic priority number 2, which is increase the community profile and the involvement of the college and its members locally, provincially, nationally, and internationally, a membership survey was evaluated, and we now have a list of volunteer organizations where the Emeriti volunteer, and it's available for all Emeriti where they can, for their use, and they can look for ways to contribute each year. Many thanks to special interest groups on community volunteer Ruth Dirksen. And that was priority 2. Priority 3 was enhanced recognition of the relevance and benefits of the college members of UBC. And the UBC Emeritus College to the University. UBC systems aren't set up to collect data of this nature, but generally for Emeriti, this is easy to do. And we've been, Ann Junker has set this up, and we really appreciate the efforts of Ann in this regard. These efforts will continue going forward, and many thanks to Ann for doing this. Strategic priority number 4 was to ensure that the college is effective, efficient, and sustainable, and for this a lot was done. Lynn Warburton was hired as the communication manager last summer and has created a roadmap for the communication strategic plan. Thank you, Lynn, for setting the college up for the next steps to implement this roadmap. We wish you all the best. In August, the college moved to the new space in Brock Commons South. Many of you probably were there. How many were at the grand opening day? Oh, good number of you. Thank you for coming out. The official opening celebration was well attended in early April, and I'd like to thank the grand opening committee members for their contributions. And of course, overseeing this grand opening committee was, this was guided by the staff, 4 staff members. We have Sandra Van Ark, and we have Sarah, and we have Queenie, and we have Lynn, as I just mentioned. And as I look back on that day, it appeared as if the events were done by a professional committee, and they were. It was really a lovely event. Creating a succession plan is ongoing, and we hope to finalize the process in the coming year. Undertaking development and fundraising has become a priority. The college is like most places at UBC, most units and departments at UBC, is under financial constraints. And so the Giving Day is becoming important to us. And the college participated, led by the Development Committee and supported by the Communication Manager. And it raised over $46,000. We also received an endowment of $50,000. And we'd like to thank John Fleming from the UBC Development for his advice and guidance in this. 2024-25 was a busy year. Budget changes dominated regular meetings with Deputy Provost Janice Stewart. This year saw budget changes due to the following influences: the reduction in the number of international students, tariffs. Has anybody heard that word, tariffs, before? Balanced budgets. It has been mandated that in 3 years' time, 2 now, I think, that every department and unit at UBC must have a balanced budget. And so we're all working towards that. You don't have to do that unless really been mandated that you have to do that. We co-sponsored with Faculty Relations 2 virtual retirement workshops for UBC faculty members, librarians, and academic program directors aged 55 and over. For 168 registrants, each seminar had a waiting list. Thank you to the Transitions to Retirement Committee. It really is a great group, and they've, if you're a part of it, to see how it works, it's just amazing how they put this together, and with UBC Faculty Relations, and I'd say dotted every I and crossed every T. We also subsidized 30 Emeriti from 21 departments for $59,000 for scholarly activities. And we give thanks to the Scholarly Subsidy Committee for adjudicating the applications. Of course, none of the events and activities this year would have happened without the dedication of volunteers and staff members. A big thanks to everyone who contributed. And now to the election results. We welcome Sandra Bressler from Occupational Science and Occupational Therapy as principal. And Sandra is sitting over here. And Wendy Hall from Nursing as vice principal. Wendy is not here today, but I will assume the role of past principal after June the 30th. Thank you. Members at large will be Melanie Jones. She's from UBCO. Paul Steinbach from Surgery. And is Paul here today? Don't think so. Probably online. And Lorraine Weir from English Language and Literatures. Is Lorraine here today? No, it's not either. As we move toward the 2025-26 year, I'd like to reflect on my own experience. It has been enormously rewarding to be principal at a time when there are so many challenges and so much has been accomplished. I'm grateful to my fellow executives, Paul Harrison, who made it today. Glad to see you here, Paul. He's the past principal this year, and to Sandra Bressler, who's we just mentioned is coming in as the principal July the 1st. And most especially to Sandra Van Ark for providing a steady hand with skill and knowledge. You know, Sandra deals with new principals every year. Some of them know a lot, some don't. So I would like to say thank you very much, Sandra, for all your guiding hand and skill and knowledge. If Sandra left me with the reins and let me run the whole show this year, it would be a mess. To help us look forward now, I turn the floor over to Sandra Bressler. Pull it down a bit.
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sure. Does that work? Oh, I need to. First, as you've heard, I am in the incoming principal effective July 1st, and I just have a few things to do today. First is to extend our thanks and appreciation to Bill for his leadership this year. As he told you, there were highs and there were lows, and we had many stressful meetings. We had many exciting meetings. Sorry, this isn't. And we are today because of his leadership. We have a small token of appreciation. Bill, where are you? You didn't leave. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to working with you again this year. You're not done yet. Exactly. We both co-chaired the program committee for the general meetings as well.
I look forward to seeing one of these for a long time. nobody ever invited me to speak.
Good. I just want to have a few words to share with you. As you've heard from Bill, this year has been challenging and it will continue to be challenging because of our financial constraints. However, as Bill has mentioned, under the leadership and guidance of Sandra Van Ark, she has supported our council. She has created a budget as we were supposed to that meets the new criteria while maintaining as many activities as we can to keep our college strong. You all know, and I'm just going to remind you, that we take pride in being Canada's sole emeritus college affiliated with the university. This is a tremendous accomplishment. At the inauguration of our office in Brock Common South, both the provost and the deputy provost commended our valuable contributions to the university and conveyed their pride and support for our accomplishments. The college is about to develop a new strategic plan. You heard from Bill what our strategic plan has been, aimed at enhancing retirement experience for members, increasing our profile, fostering community engagement, showcasing the Emeriti's value to UBC, and ensuring that our college remains efficient, effective, and sustainable. So you will hear more about this as the year progresses. Now, the only question that I have today, is there any other business? Anyone have any questions about the business part of the meeting? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to now turn the floor over to James Zidek. James? There you are, good. Professor Emeritus of Statistics and Chair of the Emeritus College Awards Committee. James, thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve as the chair of the awards committee this year, alongside my distinguished colleagues, Diana Larry and also Patricia Shaw, who may well be here today. Diana was unable to come, but she sent an email this morning saying she sent congratulations to all, including the winners, the other applicants, the proposers, and the wonderful staff at the college. And I would certainly, and I'm sure Patricia would agree with those sentiments. We're grateful to them. Of course, the committee's work would not have been possible without nominations. So we were very grateful to all of you who took time to prepare and to submit them. This year, we were pleased to receive more nominations by quite a few than last year, a testament to the breadth and depth of the contributions which are being made to by our Emeriti. We were really impressed by the remarkable range of activities in which they have been engaged, spanning community service, research, and creative work, and in which so many of our colleagues continue to be engaged. There are two major awards to be presented today, the first being the Distinguished Service Award, and the second will be the Award for Excellence, which will follow. I'll just briefly introduce the Distinguished Service Award. It recognizes UBC Emeriti, who since attaining emeritus status have demonstrated exceptional leadership in voluntary community service, either within Canada or internationally. In addition, the prize carries a $1,000 prize. We got stuck because there were two individuals who were tied, in our opinion. And so we recommended that this year that the award be split. And so we recommended then for the award, the first person is Wendy Hall, who was unable to be here in person this year, but also Professor Mohammed Iqbal, who is present today. Professor Hall received her Emerita appointment in 2018, and she has capped her distinguished career with an extraordinary broad range of volunteer services, notably her work with the Ministry of Children and Family Development. The co-recipient, Professor Iqbal, attained his emeritus status in 1996. He founded the Marina Helena Foundation in Pakistan dedicated to poverty reduction, a project that has since given rise to numerous spin-off initiatives and whose impact continues to grow. I'm delighted that the president was able to be here with us today and to present the reward for service, distinguished service. So, Mr. President, may I turn this over to you?
Well, thank you very much, very much. Oh my God, what did I do now? I think it was planned, right? That was quite incredibly timed, I have to say. And I think that's it. I think that's it. Well, again, nice to see everyone. Thank you for the kind invitation. It's great to be here. We have a beautiful day for it too. Unbelievably, it's been already 18 months for me at UBC, and what a great institution. And it's my opportunity once again to thank you for everything that you do for UBC. It's always a pleasure and an honor to interact with the Emeritus College. Today, we're presenting the 2025 President's Award for Distinguished Service by UBC Emeriti. And Jim, you stole a bit of my thunder there by announcing already the award winners. And here we go again. As you all know, the award recognizes those Emeriti whose volunteer contributions have gone above and beyond, and whose efforts continue to reflect the very best of our university even after retirement. And today I'm proud to honor two extraordinary individuals whose post-retirement achievements exemplify the spirit of this award, Dr. Wendy Hall and Dr. Mohammed Iqbal. Let me begin with Dr. Wendy Hall, who unfortunately can't be here today. But let's make sure that we honor her properly in absentia. And we'll get to hear her thanks through video, I understand. Dr. Hall retired from the School of Nursing, but never slowed down. She has remained deeply engaged as a representative to the Emeritus College since 2020 and as a member of council since 2022. Since retiring, Dr. Hall has continued her research and scholarly contributions at an exceptional pace. Indeed, since 2019, Dr. Hall has published 17 peer-reviewed journal articles, and she's continued to share her research findings with academic audience throughout numerous conference presentations. She served as principal applicant on 4 Tri-Council grants funded by SSHRC, and as co-investigator on 3 grants awarded by local and international funders. These grants have totaled over $700,000. Yeah, oh, Jesus is right. Dr. Hall is frequently featured as a subject expert in news media. In the last 5 years, she's engaged in 57 radio and TV interviews on topics like healthy infant and family sleep, the effects of screen time on sleep. These are not good. The effects of screen time on sleep, not good. And sleep in the context of climate change. Dr. Hall regularly guest lectures at the undergraduate and graduate level, has contributed to the development of curricula, has contributed to many international collaborations, and serves as an international reviewer for many conferences and grant competitions. In all of this, Dr. Hall's work has combined scholarly excellence with a profound and enduring commitment to the well-being of families in British Columbia and beyond. We're very grateful for her outstanding service and continued leadership, and it is therefore my great pleasure to present Dr. Wendy Hall with the 2025 President's Award for Distinguished Service by UBC Alumni. I'll make sure to let Wendy know that you received a generous applause. And now I think we go to video, perhaps.
I begin with my regrets for being unable to attend the awards ceremony and thus recording this acceptance speech to be shared at the ceremony. It was only possible to observe the meeting via Zoom from overseas where I'm currently located. I am deeply honored to receive the Emeritus College President's Award for Distinguished Service. This recognition from my colleagues in the college and from my nursing colleagues is very special. I want to begin by expressing my profound thanks to Dr. Emily Jenkins, professor in the UBC School of Nursing, for spearheading my nomination. I also wish to thank Dr. Elizabeth Saywick, director of the School of Nursing, and Allison Eller, clinical practice and operations supervisor for the Regional Early Years Public Health Program in Vancouver Coastal Health, for their wonderful letters of support. This award, sponsored by the Emeritus College and given by President Bacon, speaks to the University of British Columbia's commitment to the communities it serves. The volunteer work undertaken by members of the Emeritus College is inspiring. Their activities connect the Emeritus community to the university and local, provincial, national, and international communities. I have endeavored to make a contribution to the health and well-being of families and children through supporting and promoting healthy sleep at home, in Canada, and abroad. It is an inspiration to have this work recognized. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to turn to our second recipient who is here with us today, Dr. Mohammed Iqbal. Where's Mohammed? Ah, Mohammed. Congratulations. Yeah, a round of applause, please. Dr. Iqbal, or Mo, as many of you know him, retired from UBC's Department of Mechanical Engineering in 1996 after a distinguished 30-year career specializing in solar power. But retirement was just the beginning of a remarkable new chapter of global impact. Since then, Dr. Iqbal has devoted himself to creating opportunities for disadvantaged communities in Pakistan, his country of birth. In 1999, Dr. Iqbal founded the Maria Elena Foundation, a Canadian charity dedicated to supporting education, healthcare, and vocational training in Pakistan. Since then, under his leadership, the foundation has helped to establish 20 permanent self-sustaining co-ed primary schools with an enrollment of about 3,500 students, 20 schools. 15 additional one-room schools for the most impoverished communities in Pakistan where about 450 students are enrolled. A medical clinic where 80 patients a day receive treatment at a very low cost. 2 vocational centers empowering young women to learn traditional needlecraft and sewing, which helps the invisible household economy. 2 primary school libraries. Scholarships for grade 9 and 10 girls in science. And an internship program in Vancouver for Canadian university students who want to learn about international development. All told, the foundation has raised more than 1.8 million since its inception, supporting thousands of students and families every year, all guided by Mo's values of equity, opportunity, and service. Dr. Iqbal, for your unwavering commitment to the empowerment of others and your extraordinary example of service beyond retirement, it's my great, great privilege to present you in person with the 2025 President's Award for Distinguished Service by UBC Emeriti. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Iqbal.
Yeah, all good right there. Okay, perfect. And deep breath, relax. Beautiful. Thanks, Paul.
Well, again, everyone, thanks for inviting me and thanks for everything that you do for UBC. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much.
The second award goes to Professor Charles Krebs. This award recognizes Emeriti who since retirement have demonstrated excellence through innovative research, artistic creation, or novel applications of earlier work. The committee recommended Charles Krebs for this award, because in the 23 years since he retired, he has remained one of the world's foremost field mammalogists and ecologists. His prolific and influential contributions continue to shape the field and inspire generations of researchers. I will now invite the principal to present the award for excellence.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. So many UBC Emeriti take retirement to new heights, turning their careers into passion projects or turning to a whole new passion. The UBC Emeritus College Award for Excellence in Innovation and Creative Endeavors celebrates a person who has demonstrated excellence in their engagement in innovative research, artistic creation, or new applications of previous research since attaining Emeritus status. This year, we honor Dr. Charles Krebs, Professor Emeritus of Zoology. His extraordinary post-retirement contributions as a researcher, author, lecturer, and blogger deeply impressed the selection committee. What stood out was not just the remarkable volume of his work, but the continuing impact of his ideas and scholarship across ecological sciences. From the influential review of the ecology of northern Canada to the enduring success of his textbooks, and from his original fieldwork to his thoughtful outreach through the books like The Ecological Worldview and Why Ecology Matters, Dr. Krebs' work exemplifies the very best of what it means to be an emeritus professor. His output since retirement accounts to half his lifetime contributions, a simply astonishing achievement. Beyond the number and accolades, impressive as they are, the spirit of intellectual curiosity and commitment he has sustained is what truly makes him a standout. He continues to enhance the stature of UBC, his department, and the field of ecology in every way. Let's thank Dr. Krebs. Congratulations, fellas. It's a great honor to be with you. Well, thank you very much.
Just like you're graduating. Here we go. All I'm missing is Benoit. I'm doing that. Yeah, let's do 1, 2, 3, and now let's get Benoit. Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. This brings us to the third and annual portion of the meeting. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Paul Quirk, the Phil Lynn Chair in U.S. Politics and Representation at UBC. So he's going to share insights about making sense in these troubling times with our American neighbors. So Paul is the Phil Lynn Chair in U.S. Politics and Representation, as I was saying. After his PhD at Harvard University, he has taught at several U.S. universities, most recently the University of Illinois, and has been a research associate at the Brookings Institution. As a citizen and lifelong resident of the U.S. until he joined the UBC faculty in 2004, he has written on a wide range of topics in American politics, including Congress, the presidency, presidential elections, public opinion, regulatory politics, and public policy making. His awards include the Louis Brownlow Book Award of the National Academy of Public Administration and the Aaron Wildavsky Enduring Achievement Award of the Public Policy section of the American Political Science Association. Professor Quirk, let me just give you an idea of the publications that Professor Quirk has produced. Just a sample here of 3 or 4. The United States and Canada, How Two Democracies Differ and Why It Matters. Division at the Water's Edge, The Polarization of Foreign Policy. The Presidency, Trump and the Question of Fitness. Polarized Populism, Masses, Elites, and Ideological Conflict. So Professor Quirk is active in the U.S. Studies program at UBC and is currently chair of the U.S. Politics Area Committee in the graduate program. Let's welcome today Professor Quirk. Thank you, Paul. Your hand. Thank you.
So, okay, good, thank you. Got a slide showing? Yes. I'll show a couple more slides, not very many, in just a second, but first I want to thank you for the invitation. I understand that Paul Morantz, my former colleague in political science, recommended me for this task. And I want to say that I always had great respect for Paul's contributions in the department when we were both in the department together. Whenever he spoke at meetings, his recommendations were smart, he was thoughtful and wise. So when I was told that he recommended me, this was very significant to me. It made me think, Paul must be slipping. Part of that, the first part about Paul's wisdom is true. So let me just show you a couple of things here. Let's see if I can get this thing forward. So I just want this. I won't need help. This be right. Oh, okay, good. Thanks. It's great. I wrote a chapter that is related to the talk I'm giving today, although I'm not using it very much. And I just want to draw to your attention. This is a book that will be coming. This is a book that will be coming out in June, so very, very shortly. And this is the table of contents. So my chapter in the book, if I can remind myself is the presidency, Trump's second term, and American democracy. This book is coming out from the University of Virginia Press in a few weeks, and I put the table of contents up there because there are a lot of chapters by very good people and chapters that I think you might find to be of interest. And this is the remainder of my slides. I'm not giving a lot of demonstration today, but just an outline of the things that I want to cover. So in this room, I'm sure there are a lot of people who have taken a bit of an interest in the Trump presidency. Mostly this is about tariffs and the 51st state sorts of issues. These are irrational and unwarranted sorts of activities, and they will harm Canada and the world. But I'm not going to be mainly talking about these things, and I think you probably know enough about them. The tariffs will come up a bit in a sort of a. Let me get my clock going. So I'll touch on tariffs just in a kind of a peripheral way. My main topic is really about Trump's second term in American democracy and the extent to which and reasons why there is a threat to American democracy as a result of his second presidency. And I'm going to spend some time, I don't do this in the chapter, but looking at what it is about American democracy that accounts for his success in obtaining power and the effectiveness of his threat. And what do the same features and his conduct in the office and other circumstances indicate about the prospects for preservation of democracy and restoration of the effective democracy in the United States. Now, I have a couple of preview points that's not really summaries, but points that I want to kind of advertise a bit on the snarky side. And one of them is that Trump is ignorant, delusional, incompetent, and lazy. But those are his only redeeming qualities. And that's a somewhat serious point because I think those qualities have something to do with the prospects for his actually defeating democracy in the United States. The second point is it's really quite an interesting one. I haven't heard people make this observation before. Trump is actively trying to secure permanent dictatorial power over the world's oldest constitutional democracy, but he is not making it a high priority. That's a kind of an ambitious job to have kind of not your main priority. So you see the topics that I'm going to talk about. The first topic is how Trump is attacking American democracy. I think you're all probably quite aware of most of this, even though you're probably focused mostly on tariffs, you see the rest of what he's doing. So I'm just going to run over a list of things really very quickly. So in policy making, Trump is and his administration is frequently ignoring existing law. He's made a remarkable number of executive orders and administrative actions that blatantly violate the relevant law. Some of these are violations just of the lawmaking process, that is, that Congress would be required to do something, and some of them are violations of individual rights that are protected in the Constitution. Most of the tariff actions are at best legally dubious. Related to this ignoring law is attempting to govern as an authoritarian dictator. He has been removing or compromising barriers to corruption and illegality, for example, firing inspectors general and firing independent agency heads whose statutory offices are term limited. He's attacking private institutions, universities, law firms. You may have heard about his efforts to punish some law firms, primarily because they represented his political opponents. He's engaged in a campaign of retribution, which he calls retribution. It's actually just revenge. Proper retribution requires an actual offense. Is not really available as a justification. And it's important is for the longer run is that he's making some efforts to undermine future elections. Election administration is mostly at the state level in the United States, so most of the action is at the state level, but he certainly is supporting efforts such as the Republicans have been making in North Carolina to take over partisan control of election administration and certification. A federal court just overturned a major effort by the Republican controlled election board in North Carolina, where they tried to overturn the election of a Supreme Court justice, state Supreme Court justice. But Trump also has been active at the federal, attempting action at the federal level. He issued an executive order that would require all of the states to require proof of citizenship in order to vote. That is, you'd have to come up with you'd have to have a passport or a birth certificate or something like that very many people don't have. That was rejected by a federal court already. Trump does not discourage efforts. Trump encourages efforts to think about him serving beyond the constitutionally permissible 2 terms. His major supporter, Steve Bannon, gave a talk saying we need Trump in 2028. And Trump has an amazing tendency to associate himself with the trappings of monarchy. And not only monarchy, he puts out photos of himself with a crown on and tweets saying, long live the king, referring to himself. He's also put out a photo of himself dressed as Pope. And he's, for the first time, president has done this, planning a major military parade to celebrate his birthday. So there's a lot of effort to, a lot of question whether he will be willing to leave office at the end of the 2nd term. The most important thing that the administration is doing in the way of attacking democracy, I think, at this point, is attacking the courts. So the administration is undertaking a large number of measures that are apparently illegal, and these measures are being addressed in court, and they're encountering a lot of resistance by judges, and the administration is challenging the legitimacy of the judges or the court's intervention in these cases. There's one case that's getting a lot of attention is the administration's refusal to cooperate to bring back a person who was wrongly accused of being a criminal, having a U.S. crime record, and was deported to El Salvador. The administration has admitted that he was wrongly deported and yet is refusing to get him to come back. There are some, they haven't been totally clear about this, but there are some degree of expression of defiance or potential defiance. His border czar, Tom Homan, was quoted saying about the mass deportations that have encountered a great deal of resistance because they don't have judicial resistance because they don't have proper due process. Tom Homan said, "We will have a deportation flight every day. I don't care what the judges think." You know, so this is really quite drastic evidence of willingness to efforts to delegitimize democracy, prepare the way to control the government currently in an authoritarian manner, and potentially to make that control permanent. On the courts thing, by the way, I want to just comment, there's nothing at all legitimate about this resistance to the courts. This is not like Canada, where there's a notwithstanding clause and you know, the ministers or heads of provinces can put off complying with court decisions. That does not exist in the United States. The principle is quite clear that the courts have the final say in determining the meaning of the law. Okay, so let's look at the question of how the U.S. Elected an aspiring autocrat twice. And the rationale for doing this is sort of to assess the prospects for the future. It's important to understand something about the nature of Trump's support and its limitations. And to do this, I'm going to spend a little bit of time saying some very general things about how elections work and how voters behave in the United States. And some of this is actually about how voters behave anywhere. So some of my observations will be sort of commonplaces in political science, but not familiar with most people. To most people. You have a sip of coffee. First, I need to mention an institutional issue, since we're explaining how Trump became president, and that is the use of primary elections to determine the nominees for president of the political parties. This is, you're probably generally familiar with, this is something that many commentators in the United States, and I've been a subscriber to this view, have regarded as a dangerous and unsound practice. Since it was adopted in 1972. It wasn't a permanent feature. And there are a number of reasons why it's thought to be an unreliable method of selection. The electorate for primaries is more extreme than the electorate ideologically than the electorate in general elections. In general, voters don't know the candidates well enough to know their leadership skills and their relationships with other leaders and so forth. And finally, a really important thing is the primary elections are multi-candidate elections, and you can, with the winner being whoever has the plurality in a given state, and there are all kinds of arbitrary results you can get when there are 6 or 8 people running. The person who wins could be the last choice of most voters, right? That's a key thing. I'd like to mention that because occasionally you hear advocacy for adoption of primary elections in Canada. And I was just say, well, if you want a prime minister like Trump, that's a pretty good start, all right, for having that. Now, we need to talk about different kinds of voters. And I'm going to, at this point, talk about just 2 big categories that are really important. First, there are reliable partisans, and that's actually most voters in the United States. There are differences among them. Some are highly engaged and attentive and reasonably informed, and they also, most of them, or a high percentage of them, also will turn out in primaries, not just in the general elections. And then there are other people who are just solid for one party or the other, but don't necessarily pay that much attention and just turn out fairly reliably. Now, something that's really significant about this group of partisans is that they are highly subject to biased perceptions and judgments, partisanly biased perceptions and judgments. Psychologists and political scientists call it motivated reasoning. A really good illustration of this is how people react to questions about what's the condition of the economy? Is the economy getting better or is it getting worse? And so if you have a chart, this is going to be my manual PowerPoint at this point. If you have a chart where you're tracing over time the percentage of people who say that the economy is improving, and you have a Democratic president, the Republicans are going to be on the bottom, moving along here, and the Democratic voters are going to be on the top, with much higher levels of optimism. And then when party control of the presidency changes, it flips. The economy doesn't change; it flips really fast. Well before there's any possible economic change. Goes from roughly, in recent times, the change went from Republicans, 80% of Republicans thinking that the economy was not doing well, but only 20% saying it was doing well, to 80% saying it was doing well just because Trump became president. Right? And it is pretty much a mirror image. That is, the Democrats do this about the same. It's actually not quite as severe. But so we need to understand partisans don't process information in a very objective manner. All right, that's the key point here. Now, an interesting thing that hasn't been studied all that well and is hard to study is, well, how far does this go? What are the limits of the biased judgment that partisans will have on both sides? So if a Democratic president declares the moon is made of green cheese, will Democratic voters believe that? Probably not, but we don't really know what the limits are with any precision. And what those limits are becomes very important for our story as time goes on. There are limits, by the way. I mean, there is some real information that comes through that same chart that I have. I won't be able to show this, but while there's with any precision, but while the main lines of the Republicans and the Democrats are pretty far apart in a way that's obviously affected by their party, the fluctuations move together quite a bit. So partisans are actually taking in some information, and some of them are responding to it. So those are partisans. The second big category is swing voters. And a key point about swing voters is that they're not much engaged in politics. They have very little information. They often have highly inconsistent judgments over different yet related issues over a very short period of time. And they make decisions on the basis of whatever issues are top of mind for them at the given period of time. They make decisions about which party to vote for on the basis of whatever considerations are top of mind for them at that particular period of time. And that's often not actually even matters that the president or the political parties control. It can be the best example is, I wasn't going to talk about this, but one of the most amusing examples of this was shown by two very good political scientists who showed that in states on the eastern shore where there had been shark attacks recently, there was a lower than expected vote for the president's party, all right, for the president and his party. People just felt bad or anxious or whatever and held it against the president. So the consequence of this, of the way swing voters work, is that the alternation between Democratic and Republican presidents and the congressional majorities are largely due to circumstances that they don't actually control or that they only partially control. They are not really in some systematic or reliable way a response to good or bad performance in any neutral sense. the most important aspect of that, of course, is that the responses are to the economy. Right. And I said that a very good illustration of this point about how it's what's top of mind, it's what's recent and what they're paying attention to that makes a difference. There are a lot of economists that forecast elections, that use data about existing conditions to predict who's going to win the election. And the economy is the single most important factor in that. But what is it about the economy that matters? A president has been an incumbent for almost 4 years, right? But what these scholars use to make their predictions is the last 6 months' performance of the economy, because the prior 3.5 years don't actually matter to people's behavior. So this is illustrating the significance of the what's top of mind. Now, I'm going to come to this a bit more later, but I'm going to point out later on. So what you have is you have partisan voters who are pretty much reliable, and I should say the balance between them doesn't change a whole lot, and the balance between them is quite equal. Doesn't normally change a whole lot in a short time, and is quite equal. And then so the election is determined by swing voters, but the swing voters are the people who don't pay much attention to politics and act on the basis of whatever is top of mind. I'm going to get into this in a bit more detail later on, but Trump's changing political fortunes were largely due to the response of swing voters to these relatively short-lived top of mind considerations as they varied over time. And we'll look at that in a bit more detail later on. Now, I'm going to say some more about Trump's nomination and election. First, I probably don't need to say why this was extremely surprising to most commentators. I spent pretty much a whole year saying every day that there was no chance that Trump would be nominated. Then later, after I said no chance he would be elected. And that turned out to be wrong. And that's because, obvious lack of qualifications, widely remarked ignorance, lots of scandalous and offensive behavior. And interestingly, at an early stage in the nomination process, he had 0 endorsements from significant political actors. Political scientists used to think that early endorsements, like your local state representative or your member of Congress, which candidate he or she endorses gets a big lift. All the other candidates for nomination had hundreds of endorsements from the thousands of actual significant endorsers in the country. Trump had 0 until he actually won some primary elections. So we're going to look at what accounts for these election wins. And the first thing is, of course, the primary election system, which makes the outcome depend on these multi-candidate races. If you win 30% of the vote in a multi-candidate race, you can be the leader and get most of that state's delegates and gain momentum that enables you to win more even later. So I think there are 3 levels for explaining his success. The first is, why were there so many people who had him as their first choice? It was probably 30% of the Republicans early on, 15% of the national public, at the point when he was running in primary elections. Analyzing that support is quite complex. Political scientists have done a lot of survey research on this. We know that his early supporters were less educated, more rural, more white, more male. They were not lower income. A lot of people think that they were predominantly lower income, but actually upper income people supported him a whole lot. There's evidence that appeals to racial hostility and authoritarian tendencies in his campaign were somewhat influential. But it's very clear that concerns about immigration were important motivators. And in fact, places that had been impacted by immigration and arguably had adverse economic effects or circumstances that could be attributed to immigration or that some attributed to it were part of his support. A lot of his support came from those places with a lot of immigration. Interestingly, even though a lot of his support came from places where there were economic troubles possibly associated with immigration, it did not come from people who were out of work in those areas. It came more from people who were doing well in those areas. But the main point, and then there's another thing that's really important to understand is the populist style that he had. And this is something that people didn't figure out until way late. He didn't seem like a plausible presidential candidate to people like me. And that was partly because of his language, the harshness and simplicity of his thinking. But a lot of that style, we now know, led people to think, well, he's like us, and he's validating our way of life and our character. And so his populist style was a big part of his support. So this sort of thing, these sorts of appeals, were enough to get 30% of Republicans at an early stage and then 50% of Republicans a little later to be very enthusiastic and support him in primaries. And that was enough to put him ahead in primaries, enough that he actually won. Now then, you have to do more than win the primaries, you have to win the general election. And that's where two other things come in. So one thing is the other Republicans, the Republicans who had not supported him, many of whom had feared him considerably during the primaries, they supported him in the way that I described. That is, the partisans vote for the position of their party. They don't process information in a very objective way. So going from winning the primaries was sufficient to enable Trump to sort of automatically win the rest of Republican voters. Now, that's still not enough to win the election. We still have to talk about swing voters. And then the question is, what issues were top of mind for those voters at that time? And in 2016, some of the main issues were simply one of the things that the politicians, the presidents don't control, that becomes top of mind is whether it's time for a change, whether you're sick of the people who are in office already or not. In 2016, there had been 8 years of Democratic rule. Furthermore, there were various reasons why Hillary Clinton was somewhat unpopular, and then there was a damaging email scandal. These were the kinds of things. I wouldn't claim to give you a comprehensive summary of everything that influenced most voters, but issues like that were probably pivotal for determining which way the swing voters went in 2016. Now, in 2018, Trump had very large losses in the midterm congressional elections. But that, again, is pretty much a matter of what tends to be top of mind. The president's party almost always loses significant seats in the midterm election. And it seems to be kind of a matter of people wanting to balance. They gave, in the last election, they gave the presidency to one party. A lot of people sort of think, well, that party's got enough power, we'll give the Congress to the other party for the next 4 years. Then in 2020, running against Joe Biden, Trump was rejected. And this was probably, in terms of the top of mind people, the swing voters, Trump had a boatload of scandals by that point that undoubtedly had some effect. And probably more important, the economy was in bad shape, mostly because of COVID. This wasn't actually largely due to mistakes that Trump had made, but the economy was in pretty bad shape. And so the swing voters went against Trump in 2020. Now then in 2022, this is after he's left office, not very voluntarily. The midterm elections again were a major rejection of Trump, and that's because the election denial was on the ballot in a lot of places. A lot of major candidates at the state level had advocated for Trump, and there were very strong attacks by Democrats about the threats to democracy. And then of course, January 6th had occurred in early, a couple of years earlier, and was still very much on people's minds. So that in 2022, the swing vote went against Trump, and he had another very poor midterm election, even though he wasn't really in office. And then in 2024, Trump comes back, and memories of the election denialism or focus on it had started to fade, and people were mostly concerned about inflation. The Economist had a magazine cover, Economist magazine had a cover showing or declaring that the American economy was actually the envy of the world at that time for its recent performance, but there was high inflation, which was largely an after effect of COVID and the post-COVID spending. And polls at the election made it very clear that inflation was the single most important issue. So Trump is back, right? So that's how, that's kind of the key point here is when he wins and loses, kind of is largely determined by these factors that don't have a whole lot to do with a thorough analysis of his position on democracy issues. Now, then there's an important matter of how is it that Trump has managed to control, I'm going on to the next topic, how he controls the Republican Party and undermines the constitutional separation of powers. And there are three important points about that, I think, that really are things we either didn't see the significance of them in advance or didn't even experience them before. Among this group of partisan supporters of Trump, which I would estimate is most of the Republican Party, of the Republican voters, a significant fraction are people you would now call members of a personality cult concerning Trump. And by that, I mean people who adulate him and deny any criticism of it, reject any criticism of him, believe he has extraordinary powers, believe everything that he says, and shut out any information that's critical. Now, we don't know exactly how many of those there are, but a couple of, some pieces of evidence, about 80% of Republicans have endorsed his false claim about the 2020 election being stolen. So there's a whole lot of readily available evidence that the election was not stolen. So that's getting to be a credible estimate of the size of the personality cult. About 70% denied that he had done anything illegal in regard to any of his criminal cases. Those are three big things: the New York financial thing, the election attempts to overturn the election, and then the documents thefts. And yet at the same time, early in 2024, only about 50% or maybe up to 60%, different polls, wanted him to run for re-election again. wanted him to be the nominee again. But so it's a little hard to pin down how many this is. But what's interesting is, how do you explain this cult? We've never seen that before in the United States. And I think there's you can kind of put together two kinds of things to get an understanding of this. First, Trump is charismatic for many citizens, partly for the reasons that I described, that he speaks like them. You know, they think of him as a great success in business and entertainment and so forth. But we've had other charismatic political leaders. I think the best examples from relatively recent times would be John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, and Barack Obama, all of whom inspired enormous enthusiasm on the part of individuals. But what's different here? I'm drawing on some very interesting writing by a psychologist named Hassan. And that is that charisma of Trump's combined with narcissism of a rather extreme kind. So people like, this is the psychologist I refer to studies cults and their leaders. And this is a typical pattern of them. The cult leader claims miraculous power and perfect virtue. You know, Trump said, only I can fix it. I know more than the generals and so forth. They condemn ordinary society. Everything else around you, everything that's not part of us is corrupt. They demand complete loyalty. And they don't tolerate any questioning or criticism. That makes you disloyal or a failure. And as a result, cult members, people who sign on, get extreme satisfaction, feeling of security, happiness, and joy from this. And I think that this is quite likely a rather reliable consequence of the combination of charisma, like we get occasionally, with extreme narcissism, like we've only gotten in the case of Trump. It's also significant that the way the Trump cult works, you don't have to totally buy in to everything. They don't have meetings, and you don't get kicked out. You know, it's not like people are living together on a compound, checking up on each other and testing each other's beliefs. And it's also important that the acceptance of Trump's positions is promoted by right-wing media, so people get some reinforcement for it. Okay, so the Trump personality cult is the first part of this. The second part is that Trump willingly and aggressively attacks Republican officials who are not compliant for him, who do not support his demands, and especially who criticize him. Now, I used to lecture on the limitations of presidential influence in Congress. And one of the big points I always made was, well, the president can't really punish members even of his own party, because he can't really campaign against them. And he can't threaten to campaign against an individual member, because he needs them all to win, or most of them to win, in order to maintain the majority. The thing that I didn't anticipate is Trump didn't give a shit about that. He was perfectly willing to campaign, to attack and criticize other Republicans at risk of losing their seat, and even at risk of the party losing their election. So members of Congress typically, well, let me just put these two together. So you have a personality cult consisting of a large fraction of the Republican Party, and then you have a president who is attacking the members of the officials of the party who are not fully compliant with his requests. He was quite effective at basically firing members of Congress and members of the Senate who were openly critical of him. And that's something that never existed before in Congress. So we've seen members of the Republican Party in Congress doing things on Trump's behalf that we never imagined would they be willing to do. Now, the third thing is about how the parties work in Congress, and that is that individuals are on their own political momentum and support in holding their seat. They obtain the nomination by winning a primary election, not by getting support from a party official, and the party officials cannot remove them. All right, so individual members of Congress can't be dictated to. Say about how they would respond to Trump. Furthermore, if some members of Congress advocated, well, the party should really be resisting some of this stuff. We should be investigating some of his abuses, or we should be voting against some of his bills that provide the basis for abuse. Those individuals would be taking the risk of being attacked by Trump and rejected by their own voters. And there's no collective decision-making capability where the party can get behind closed doors and say, look, we really have to bite the bullet and do this together because the party needs it and the country needs it. There's no way that they can enforce such a decision. And in fact, if Republican leaders in Congress were to try moving the party toward resisting Trump more effectively, or to some degree effectively, what would happen is that Trump's strongest supporters would call them out, and they would get great rewards from their constituencies for doing that, calling them out. And they would defeat the effort. So what you have then is that Congress resists and tries to control Trump only when there is a Democratic majority. So there were impeachments by the Democratic House in 2019 and 2021. When there's Republican control in the House, there are no hearings or investigations. So then the question is, it's come to the last topic and taking pretty long. Will American democracy survive Trump? And I think that this is where some of my snarky remarks come in. Trump is making multiple aggressive efforts, mostly aimed at imposing his will on current issues, that much more than securing his power permanently. I think we may see a transition toward more actions aimed at maintaining power permanently as time goes on in his term. But if Trump really intended to take over, to defeat the democracy and succeed at that, and this was a priority and he was competent and not deluded, he would be trying to build support with powerful constituencies, as many as he could, or at least those generally consistent with his views. He would be trying to take over key agencies quietly. At the Department of Defense, for example, finding reasonably respected, competent leader. He would have found a reasonably, for Secretary of Defense, he would have found a reasonably respected, competent leader who was willing to buy in and help prepare the department to do what it needed to for the sake of his taking over. Instead, he appointed an alcoholic TV commentator who's making a mess of it. And then Trump has done all kinds of things that show utter disregard for any concern about building support or maintaining support, even on the part of groups that you'd expect him to have. He's got the automobile manufacturers tearing their hair out, and farmers, and then demonstrating, this clumsy imperialism about Canada, overtaking Canada and Greenland and Panama and Gaza, and then the blatant illegality from the beginning. So my point is that this is why I was saying that, the stupidity and the delusion and laziness and incompetence were his redeeming qualities. He is making all these decisions without any planning for what it would actually take to defeat the democracy. Now, what happens? I'm going to need to cut short a little bit. Maybe we'll get into more detail exactly what the situation might be in Congress and the courts and the military. But let me just comment on what I think will be a few of the main considerations. If Trump actually becomes much more aggressive and ambitious about retaining power, then the key thing, be a number of key things, but at least one of them is what is the support that he receives in Congress and in the public. And that will turn to a great extent on what I told you about, namely swing voters and how they respond to what's going on at the time. Now, the earliest prospect, or the first thing that will happen that will be very significant in this, is the 2026 midterm congressional elections. We can predict some top of mind things, so they're not all random, and time for a change is one that's very important. Presidents, as I said, their party almost always loses support in midterm elections. Second-term presidents lose a lot of seats, almost always, in the midterm election of their second term. I think Trump fits into that category. Then the economy is likely to be working against him. And in this case, it's not usually due to from the president's own doing that the economy is good or bad. In this case, the economy will be bad, and it will be from his own doing. And the issues of his reactions to, or his efforts to overturn democracy are becoming top of mind because of his actions in this administration. I think we'd be likely to see, there are now demonstrations all over the country, one theme of which is that Trump is trying to be a dictator, right? So I think there are a lot of things that suggest that the support will turn against him. That will help with Congress and the courts and the like. And so to close, I'll mention an old remark. Dwight Eisenhower was reviled by very far right conservatives for being insufficiently aggressive in anti-communism. And there was a leader of a far-right group called the John Birch Society, whose name was Robert Welch. And he said about Eisenhower after he'd left office, Eisenhower is a communist. And a notable Republican and conservative intellectual responded to that saying, the former president is not a communist, he's a golfer. All right. And one thing I'm saying is Trump is not the leader of an authoritarian coup. He's a golfer. Right. So I'll be happy to take whatever questions you have.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Sure.
I'd like to point out that we did have our speakers lined up for this year. Paul Morant suggested Paul Quirk's name well into the year after the speakers have been invited, and it's on our list to invite Paul Quirk for next year. And one of the speaker lined up for this time withdrew He wasn't able to come to speak to us today, but and at very, very short notice. So I asked Paul if he would come and speak to us with this very short notice, and he said, yes, I'll be happy to. So the only thing is, I don't think we can invite you for next year, or can we?
Maybe if there's a coup and you can have me explain why I was wrong.
Anyway, I'm sure lots of people have lots of questions, but please, for the moment, let's restrain yourself or confine yourself to one question each. Thank you. Okay, yeah.
Would you be willing to comment on the impact of having JD Vance as a vice president, and what impact that might have?
Do you mean in an election or in his position as during governing?
Well, governing in the next election.
Yeah. So one thing to say is that political scientists have demonstrated with a whole lot of compelling data that the vice presidential candidates have hardly any effect at all on the votes, right? Even the case of candidates who were kind of notably dubiously competent, like Sarah Palin, who was the vice presidential candidate with John McCain, just makes no real difference. So I don't think he has any effect on the likely outcome of the election. He might. He would have a role if some things that could happen. I mean, there could be an effort to declare Trump incompetent, and the vice president plays a critical role in that. Trump has pretty much guaranteed that wouldn't happen because he's picked such fierce loyalists for so many of the cabinet positions. Vance would become significant if Trump steps down and then we have a regular presidential election and he's a candidate. I think it would, a vice president always has a sort of a leg up in winning the nomination, and he would not be a very effective candidate. He's not very popular. So he would probably hurt the Republicans in that.
Sorry, there was another first over there. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Really enjoyed your talk, and thank you very much for being here. I wanted to ask you, I don't think you really commented at all on the role of the super rich, the amount of money that is being spent by people to support Trump. And if I can roll a sort of second question in, do you think that Trump, in fact, is being manipulated, perhaps without his own real awareness, by the super rich and the right-wing rich establishment? Thank you.
Yeah, the role of extremely wealthy people in funding campaigns has increased in recent years, and it's a very important matter. It is not entirely on the Republican side. Republicans have an advantage in it, but Democrats have their very wealthy supporters too. No, I don't think Trump is manipulated by anybody. In fact, I don't think he gives a damn what anybody else thinks. His super rich supporters must be going crazy about tariffs, right? So I think Trump is a real narcissist. He's not faking it, and he thinks he knows what's best and what's doing. It doesn't take advice very well. But that kind of funding is a major problem in U.S. politics. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Nasir Jetta. This is an extremist view, but I want to understand your views on that. Here's an individual who said this could be the last election. Is it possible that he would bomb the midterm elections?
That what?
The midterm
That the
elections
midterm, they would be the last or that they would be canceled?
cancelled?
I have a very poor record of predicting Trump. So I'll tell you where I'm at in this. I think these things that I've mentioned that are going against him are most likely to ultimately be decisive, and that Trump will be an enormous failure during this presidency, and the Republicans will suffer major defeats in 2026 in the midterms and 2028, but maybe not. That is, it would be, so what would happen right now if, say, Trump declared some sort of an emergency and said that we have to postpone the midterm elections? It's not clear who would support it, who would not. I would say at this point, it actually is clear that the Supreme Court would not support it if it got to the Supreme Court. But what if Trump said, screw the Supreme Court? They're still canceled, right? I mean, these are really unlikely. Along with being lazy, he's a lazy person. I don't think Trump would really have the guts to get involved in something like this. There could be shooting. He could be executed for treason. This is really big stuff. But I don't totally rule out those extreme possibilities.
Yes, Kelly.
So your last point, I think you've somewhat convinced me, at least, that American democracy is going to survive Trump because of the characteristics you attribute to him. But that's a different question than America's place in the world, whether it's deserved or not. And I'm wondering what you think about the reactions that we're seeing internationally, especially among traditional allies, of not being able to thinking that they cannot rely on the U.S. because of Trump and these uncertainties. And so that were it to come to pass in a decade or less, the U.S. is sort of back where it had always been. The world may have moved on irretrievably. What do you think about?
Well, I think I'm not an expert in these matters, but I do have some thoughts. The first is that I think the world will conclude that the United States cannot be relied upon. I think that has just been amply demonstrated now in 2 elections of Trump. The head of I forget which official it was, but some major European leader said, the Western world needs a new leader. Europe is going to take it over, right? And I think that's right. Now, that would reduce American influence on some things, but it might not be bad for the world. From the standpoint of what the world situation is, if you had an American government return to normal and rejoin the Western alliance, but not be counted on as the principal actor in it, that could really help the world. And then on the economic front, I think the same thing, much the same thing will happen. Every country is going to realize that you can't count on the United States having fair trade relations anymore, and will lean toward developing other trade relationships. So that's going to be permanently costly to the American economy.
Let me just pause questions here on the floor first. Sandra, are there any online?
Yeah, we got one question online. It's from Shauna Butterwick. What do you make of the Democrats who supported Trump's actions?
Well, there hardly were any Democrats that supported Trump's actions. I'm not sure exactly what he might be thinking of. In terms of party division, let me bring up, comment a little bit on differences within the parties. A pretty good indicator is the impeachment votes that happened in the House and the Senate. Every Democrat supported the impeachments in both the House and the Senate. And I think that maybe the guy from West Virginia voted against one of the articles of impeachment, but the Democrats were solid on this. A handful of Republicans in the House and the Senate supported impeachments in both times. And there's a lot of discussion. I was going to bring this up. I didn't really have time. We know a lot about there being a lot of Republicans who are dissatisfied and worried and oppose Trump privately and speak against them in private. So there is room for that, that dissent or dissatisfaction to expand. But I have not really seen any important support if he's talking about Democratic officials.
Okay, yes.
Elaine, oh.
Thank you, Paul, very much. You talked about different groups that had support or not support Trump. I'm interested in your views on the high-tech crowd and not just the money they're putting in, but some of the actual participation that they're having in this administration. And so if I go down my rabbit hole, I would like to wonder if you think there's any possibility that someone like Elon Musk could play with the midterm elections or the 2028 elections. And you know what I mean by play with.
Technical interference with the election system. I'm not an expert in that. Those are highly technical matters. My understanding is that the election systems are quite thoroughly hardened against technological attacks. And that was something that was a matter of concern during the Biden administration, because during the 2020, 16 and 20 election, Russians were clearly interfering in various ways. And they did hack into some registration systems and the like without making any changes or changing anything. But we've had a Democratic administration aware of risks of technological interference with elections, administration and counting and so forth. And I don't think there's any real danger of that now, but I could be wrong.
Maybe one or two more questions. So, yeah.
Thanks for your presentation. One of the solutions might be, some improved leadership from the Democratic side, Democratic Party. I know there's some evidence of galvanized opposition and trying to develop sensible policies rather than just opposition to Trump. But some Democratic politicians are just dithering about trying to deal with the latest circus act that's going on. My question to you is, do you see the formation of, number one, innovative and attractive policy that might swing those swing voters, and also have a leader that emerges that will be popular?
That's a good question, but I'm not really prepared to give a very good answer to it. The Democrats, to the extent that they have policy agendas now, can't get any attention for them because they don't have majorities in either the House or the Senate. So they can't move any legislation. And there are undoubtedly lots of plans that are written up and sitting in drawers and that aren't getting attention, and I don't know about them. So I don't know a whole lot about that. But the way the U.S. political system works, the agenda for the 2026 midterm elections will be mostly attacking Trump. And negative attacks work. There isn't really a whole lot of reason to lead with a positive agenda at that stage. In 2026, 2028, next presidential election, the agenda is really determined by who wins that nomination. There is not an important party process of determining policy agendas for the future. It all comes down to which person becomes the nominee and what their agenda, what their plans are. So I think the Democrats have a lot of capable people. I'd be optimistic that they'll pick a good candidate. I think Kamala Harris was a perfectly fine candidate. There's a tendency for people to assume whenever the party loses that there was something wrong with their candidate and it was their fault. But I think in general, the Democrats are pretty good at picking candidates. Joe Biden, the first time around, was pretty good. Who? George Santos? Sanders. I don't imagine he's going to run for president again, but could be. He doesn't look any different to me now than he looked in about 1996.
This is something that I wonder, and you talked about Trump's narcissism, you talked about the personality cult, and then we hear, the first 100 days, he has not had one success. How long are people going to continue to support this person with these traits and there's no outcomes to show for all he's trying to do?
I would say that for a substantial, for maybe half of the Republican voters and easily enough to be a critical force, that's where they're at until death. That is, nothing will change their minds. And I think that's kind of the nature of the personality cult. It becomes something that people get emotional satisfaction from, and it's a source of strength for them, and they develop defense mechanisms against absolutely any information that you can provide for them. If he hasn't accomplished anything, it's because, well, the world and everybody else is even more evil than we told you. Right? So I don't think there's any likelihood of significant loss of the MAGA constituency on Trump's part. And I also, for that reason, don't think there's any prospect for most Republican office holders to become they're all reliable supporters of democracy. The hope for resistance to Trump and support for democracy comes from Democrats and swing voters and a modest number of Republican defectors.
I think we should call the question period at that point and thank Paul very much. I really appreciate it, Paul. Thank you. And as a token of our appreciation, the much coveted Emeritus College umbrella.
Well, where will I use this? Thank you very much. That's
Thank you
very
so
nice.
much.
I appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate you coming. Thank you. Well, that brings the AGM to a close, everyone. I hope you've had time to chat to colleagues, and I hope you can have a bit more time just to mingle a bit. Thank you.